I'm Mike.
I'm Sam. Let's get into it.
Mel Kiper has no more credentials to do what he's doing than my neighbor, and my neighbor's a postman.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 5. Today, we're going to be covering only 2 topics, but I think we're going to try to get pretty in-depth with these 2 topics. So first on the slate, pretty big news out of the basketball world. We have Jalen Green, the number 1 recruit for the senior class this year, deciding to go to the NBA G League instead of going the college route. And he had offers from Oregon, Kentucky, Memphis. So that's a pretty big news.
Yeah, it's a huge move considering it was the number 1 ESPN prospect going into his freshman year of college, and he decided to forego his freshman year at college to take that G League route, not only to get money immediately, he can get $500K in incentives up to that, but to really try to make his draft stock better by playing better talent than he would have in the NCAA. It's going to be really interesting to see how Jalen Green does in the G League, because I feel like for this to gain traction for other high schoolers to potentially think about doing, not only do they need to see somebody do it, but they need to see somebody do it successfully. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Jalen Green does, and I'm definitely going to be paying attention to him.
Yeah, I would definitely pay attention to him, but like the downfall of this is it's the G League, and not a lot of people are going to tune into G League games, which is like, for basketball, it's a lot about building your different from other sports. It's a lot about building like your personal brand.
That's true.
That's just because the way the sport is. So if he like playing on the college level, having national televised games, a lot of people are going to recognize him more when he's ready to do the draft, rather than doing this G League route.
Yeah, and I think he's really confident in himself that he thinks, well, I'm already the number 1 recruit going into this freshman class. He's projected to be, by a lot of websites, the 4th pick in the draft for the 2021 mock. I know it's way too early to be doing that, but I think he's one of those players where he's already recognized in the high school circuit, so I think he already has NBA scouts that are going to pay attention to him, are going to go to his G League games. I think it's more important to build your brand if you're that guy who's kind of off the radar. I think we see every single year in the NCAA tournament, March Madness, and this is a reason I'm so sad that it's not here this year, is because so many guys go from second-round picks to even maybe undrafted to lottery picks. We saw that with Dante DiVincenzo, for example, who's actually contributing really good NBA minutes on the Bucks now. So it's more important for players like that. But yeah, for sure, Jalen Green, he has a good March Madness that could propel him to the number 1 pick in the draft. So
I just think that he is very confident, but I think that might hurt him in the long run, because he's not playing against college kids. Because playing against college kids, say he's going to Kentucky and he plays Vanderbilt, like half the player on Vanderbilt aren't going to be in the NBA, really.
Yeah.
Like when he's in the G League, he's going to be playing against grown men.
Sure.
So if he's not going to be able to have the productivity and like put up the numbers that he's used to when he was in high school, or if he was going to go to college, it might hurt his morale and might deter teams from actually drafting him.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I think the G League move, I think it's bad for your draft stock compared to going to college, but I think it's good for your development as a basketball player. I think Jalen Green's going to have some ups and downs in the G League, but I think he would have performed better in college, and I think his draft stock would have done better in college because he's facing less talent and because he has more national recognition if he's playing in college compared to the G League. But again, he's playing better players in the G League. He's in a better system in the G League. A lot of the time, he has better coaches in the G League, and he has better players to play off of in the G League. So we'll see. It's really important in the NBA, too, to develop skills with really good players. So Jalen Green's used to being this ball-dominant player, the best player on the court every time he steps foot on a court. So I think it's really good for him to face other borderline NBA talent, and we'll see how this does for him.
Yeah, I agree with that, because it said in like a article I was reading that he relies a lot on his quickness, which now since he's in the G League, he's going to be playing against quick people, strong strong men, not just boys. And he's going to have to develop it, like more moves to get around defenders and not just rely on that natural born athletic ability like that he would in high school.
Yeah, again, that's why I think the G League move is really good. He's really betting on himself, and he thinks he's going to get better in the G League, and I agree with that. There's been some concerns about his jump shot. There's been some concerns about him creating for his teammates, and I think once you enter a college basketball system, you can kind of ignore those things and still play to your strengths. But I think once you get to the NBA, every single area of your game is highlighted, strengths and weaknesses, and I think G League you can say the same. So he's going to have to develop a better jump shot, and he's going to have to develop better handles. So I think he's going to show NBA scouts that he's willing to take a more difficult path to get to the NBA, which I do really appreciate. And again, both of us are just speculating the reasons to why he's going to the G League. Maybe it's solely because of the money, and if it's solely because of the money, I don't think that would be smart in the long run, because if he stays in college for a year, then has a better draft stock, then he can get picked higher, which then would make him make more money as a rookie. So financially, I don't think the G League is as good as everybody makes it out to be, because again, he's only earning up to $500,000 in incentives potentially, which is still a lot of money, but he can make a lot more money if he did go to college and he was a top draft pick compared to, let's say, his draft stock plummets in the G League, which I don't really see happening, but hopefully he's not just doing it for the money.
Yeah, I don't know about him personally, but I think a lot of like high schoolers would pick this option for the money if a lot of players, athletes come out of impoverished home lives, so like this might be able to be a bigger decision for them to help give money to their families immediately.
Yeah, that's very true, which would be a great decision for him and his family, obviously. But again, in the long run, it'd be smarter to try to get the best draft stock possible so you can make more money in the future. But again, a lot of these guys can't wait for the future. The future is now. They need to provide for their family now, especially because of Corona. His family could potentially not be working right now, and even when they were working, they could be working paycheck to paycheck. So again, it would be a great thing for Jalen Green and his family if he made this money immediately. So good for him. I'm excited for him to go in the G League, and hopefully a lot of other people follow in his class and other classes in the future.
Well, I think he might have got like influence from LaMelo Ball and R.J. Hampton, who chose to play in the NBL, and a lot of like you're playing against similar competition with the G League. It's not going to be, it's like not as the level of competition because these people obviously aren't in the G League or the NBA, but it's also you're playing against grown men who are faster and stronger, so it helps you develop your game more. It's more of a gritty, physical game, so you gotta like toughen up.
Yeah, that's a really good point about LaMelo Ball. And the point about LaMelo Ball I would like to make as well is I think a lot of people think he actually increases draft stock because of how well he played in that Australian basketball league against grown men. He really put on display. He's a 6'8" point guard who could shoot the ball and distribute. That's extremely valuable, not only in the high school level, not only against Lithuanian players, but against real, actual professional basketball players. He was one of the best players in the entire league. So Jalen Green, yes, I do think saw that and said, wow, I could stand out among these adults, these 30-year-olds who've been playing basketball, and that's all they've been doing for 10 plus years. So
yeah, I wonder if like with this and a lot of new players trying to do this G League route, I wonder if the NBA would consider changing like the one and done rule, because I know even last year when Zion got hurt, when he went through his shoe against North Carolina and he hurt his knee, like instantly after that game, a lot of people were asking or seeing if the NBA would willing to change their one and done rule so people can go right from high school to the NBA.
Yeah, I think the NBA really created the one and done rule for two reasons. One, they wanted to prevent high school players that weren't ready for the NBA to go to the NBA, but two, more importantly, I believe they kind of have a deal with the NCAA that we're not going to steal all your really good talent, because if all of the best high school talent every single year went straight to the NBA, two things would happen. One, there'd be a lot more busts, in my opinion. And two, the NCAA just wouldn't be as exciting because they aren't drawing these great talents to their league. Like, I know all the hype surrounding Duke that one year, they got the top 3 prospects. Things of that nature wouldn't happen anymore. And I think that does hurt the overall basketball game, because it's really nice to have multiple leagues to look forward to. And I know in the United States, we only really pay attention to 2 basketball leagues, which is the NCAA and the NBA. So I don't really see the NBA wanting to make that one and done rule go away, because now what's happening is they have their developmental league, which I know they were trying to rebrand. They called it the G League a couple of years ago instead of the D League. They're really trying to make their farm league better. So I think because of that, them wanting to promote the G League and them not wanting to really take away all the business away from the NCAA, I think they would still be really hesitant to go back to the one and done rule. So, or to remove the one and done rule, I should say.
I mean, even when the one and done rule wasn't in place, like, it's not like a crazy amount of young kids, high school kids were going to the NBA. It was only those kids that were extremely good. Like, the list is like Kobe, LeBron, Kevin Garnett, Tracy
McGrady, yep.
Moses Malone. It's not like an average like bench player was going to the NBA. Like, a lot of players were still doing the NCAA route to develop their game and get better, but these athletes that knew they were going to be dominant no matter which route they went straight to the NBA.
That is true. But starting in 2005, right after LeBron went to the NBA right out of high school and had all that success, I think Jalen Green did it as well, and he didn't end up having as much success. And I think some other players started to do it. I'm going to read off some names that did it after LeBron James did it. We have CJ Miles, Gerald Green, Monte Ellis, Lou Williams. So some good players, but some other players in there, Anthony Simmons, who didn't end up being as successful. So I think the NBA kind of saw that and kind of wanted to go away from players thinking that they were going to make all this money in the NBA coming out of high school. Meanwhile, their career lasts 1 to 2 years. It's better for them to be able to get a free education and then potentially play basketball, because not everybody can make a career out of basketball. Now, I know that's not the NBA's mindset. I'm sure they don't really care about that too much in their future careers, but I think it was important for them to have a good relationship with the NCAA, so I don't think they wanted to kind of tamper with their talent pool.
Yeah, but I think this G League thing will even hurt the NBA's relationship with the NCAA even more, because if players are picking the G League over the NCAA, the NCAA is going to get pissed off because they're going to take from the challenge. Because it's not like these players are going straight to the NBA. They're going to the G League, which it's more of a appeasing offer because they're going to be able to develop and they're going to get paid. So it's like a kind of like a step up from the NCAA, which might upset the people in the authority, like the higher ups of the NCAA.
That's true. I think it's kind of the NBA's way of subtly trying to start to steal and take that high school talent away from the NCAA without outright doing it and sending those players right to the NBA. So I think, again, they're trying to slowly maybe transition into letting high school players go right into the NBA, but I don't think they're ready to make that solid, concrete decision just yet.
Because I know Adam Silver was like saying that in the future that one and done rule would maybe change. So I'm looking forward to see what will happen.
Yeah, we'll see. I think it definitely pushes the agenda of paying college athletes as well.
Yeah.
With this decision now, I don't know if that is what is going to happen in lieu of all of this. But again, the question is raised. NCAA, now you have competition with this G League who is going to pay their players. The main reason for a lot of these players to forego your league to go to the G League is for that money. So now NCAA, are you going to offer your players money? So I think that's going to be a question for the future as well with all of this.
All right, so for our next segment, we're going to look at some mock drafts for the NFL draft. Specifically, we're going to go on the NFL.com. We're going to look at Bucky Brooks, Daniel Jeremiah, Charles Davis, and we're just going to go through each pick and tell us our thought process, and what their thought process probably was.
Yeah, the week of the draft, we're going to go more in depth into these prospects and players and where we think these players are going to go and what we think of these players. But we're going to kind of do a narration review on the mock drafts that are already presented to us by the experts. So let's get into it.
All right, so for the first pick, Cincinnati Bengals, pretty consensus over the whole board. Joe Burrow first overall. I don't think there's much of a surprise there.
Yeah, it's an absolute lock. I feel like every single year when there's a consensus number one pick, people are always bored with the fact that it's such a lock for the first pick. So they try to make all this speculation and news to, oh, maybe the team could trade their pick. Ooh, maybe they could pick this player or that player. And we saw that with Joe Burrow this year. Oh, maybe the Bengals trade down with the Dolphins and acquire all these picks. Ooh, maybe the Bengals pick Chase Young. Ooh, maybe they pick someone else. No, I think it's just speculation by people who don't want to accept the fact that it's so concrete. The NFL draft is so fun because it is a surprise, but this one is not a surprise. Joe Burrow is for sure going to get picked number one by the Bengals. The Bengals need a franchise quarterback. Joe Burrow is a franchise quarterback from Ohio, playing in Ohio. He's going to be the number one pick.
Yeah, I think it's going to be it's an easy decision for the Bengals. I don't know if it's an easy decision for Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
A lot of speculation saying he'll pull an Eli Manning and demand a trade. I don't think he'll do that.
Yeah, no.
I mean, going to the Bengals is a very hard team to play for. I think they just have an abysmal front office, and their roster is pretty rough, so see what happens.
Yeah, I think it'd be a really bad look, though, for Joe Burrow to kind of not want to play for the Bengals, or not want to play for the Bengals, but deny them of ever even playing with them, because we saw guys recently like Baker Mayfield so willing and so happy about the idea of getting picked number one overall by a terrible franchise in hopes of being the sole reason that franchise did turn around. I think that does excite Joe Burrow a little bit, that he could be the face of the franchise, potentially the best player in that franchise's history, because they haven't had so much success in their history. So I think Joe Burrow does chase greatness, and I think that would be a great opportunity for him to do it in a city and in a team that could really be his own, compared to, let's say, he gets drafted by a team like the Patriots. He's never going to be that quarterback of that franchise or that player of that franchise, because they did have Tom Brady's in the past who he's always going to be in their shadow. So I do think Joe Burrow does like the idea of being that guy for that city.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so for the next pick, the Washington Redskins, and again, another clear board, the same pick on the across the board. We got Chase Young.
Yeah, Chase Young. It's interesting with the Redskins too. There's a lot of speculation that they won't pick Chase Young as well. Now, I do think they're going to pick Chase Young. It's one of those situations where you're the second pick in the draft. You're a really bad team. You just have to get the best player available, and Chase Young is the best player available. A lot of people say he is the best player in the draft, period. A lot of people are saying he's the best DN prospect in a really long time, or edge prospect in a really long time. People say he's better than Nick. People say he's better than Joey Bosa coming out of Ohio State. I don't know if I would quite say that, but the thing about the Washington Redskins, which I do think is very interesting, is on that really bad team, one thing on that team that is actually very good, better than league average, is their pass rush and is their defensive line. So to add a defensive lineman to a position that you don't need and you're such a bad team and you have so many holes, I think that is interesting, and I think that is a question to bring up. And I really do think the Redskins can't just pick Chase Young and go ahead with their season. I do think they need to move some pieces around that defensive line to not only open up an opportunity for Chase Young to play as much as possible, but to fill in other holes in other teams, because we saw recently Quentin Williams on the Jets get picked high overall, but the Jets already had a defensive line, so he barely even played last season. So I would hate for something like that to happen to Chase Young. So I do think the Redskins are going to need to retool their roster a little bit after this pick.
Yeah, well, I think Chase Young, I think he's one of the best. He's going to be one of the best defensive players in the league a couple of years from now. I think he's better than Joey Bosa. I think him and Nick it's a bit of a toss-up who would be better coming out of college. But I think when you have someone like Chase Young on your board and he's still available, I don't think you can't pass him up. Unless you need a quarterback, I don't think you can pass Chase Young up. And I think that if you have Chase Young, Ryan Kerrigan, Jonathan Allen, Montez Sweat, that's a insane front pass rush, and a lot of quarterbacks lining up against that would be very scared. I think that can help you. If the pass rush is good, that gets the opponent's offense off the field, gets your offense on the field, more opportunities to score and more opportunities to win games.
Yeah, it's true. A lot of people say the two most important positions are football or are the quarterback and the guys that can go after and get the quarterback. So Chase Young solidifying that edge, that's a great pick. Can't go wrong there.
For the third pick, this one has pretty much the same, except one. Bucky Brooks has a different pick than everybody. But 3 out of the 4 have Jeff Okudah, and then Bucky Brooks has Derek Brown out of Auburn.
Yeah, they're saying Jeff Okudah is one of the best cornerback prospects that we've seen in a really long time, too, comparable to a Jalen Ramsey, a really physical corner. He's 6'1", which is actually a really good size for a corner. Could cover the slot, could cover the X, could cover the Z. Not only that, but he's good at pursuit. He could tackle. I think he's a little bit better than Quentin Diggs, I believe, out of Alabama. And
Stephon Diggs' brother.
Yeah, and the cornerback, I believe his name is C.J. Henderson, yes, out of Florida. Because of that size, because of that frame, because of that versatility that Jeff Okudah does have. So cornerback is another position I do think is extremely important, but the reason I really hate Jeff Okudah to the Lions at number 3 is because it doesn't improve the Lions. The Lions are trading basically Darius Slay for Jeff Okudah. I don't know how much better Jeff Okudah could be his rookie year than Darius Slay, because Darius Slay is year in and year out a top 10 cornerback in the league, sometimes even top 5, you can argue, for Darius Slay. So to get rid of that veteran cornerback and just bring in a rookie cornerback who can be just as good, if not better potentially. But with this pick, I see the Lions picking number 3 again next year because, again, they don't really help their roster out. In the same vein that I do think just getting Joe Burrow for the Bengals doesn't help their roster out that much in the immediate sense, but they did do things in free agency. And Joe Burrow is much, much, much better than Andy Dalton in the future. Maybe not immediately, but with Jeff Okudah, I really don't see how that's going to improve their overall team right now and in the long-term sense, because they did have a Darius Slay for such a long time, and they weren't able to really do anything with that one playoff appearance with Darius Slay. So I just see the Lions being stagnant with the Jeff Okudah pick, even though I really, really like Jeff Okudah.
I think the Lions, and a lot of analysts are saying, like, just looking at this, that the Lions would take the best available player, which Okudah probably is, but I don't necessarily think a cornerback is going to help your team a whole lot. Yes, I think Okudah is amazing. He's a great man-to-man cornerback. He's great in open field tackling. He's physical. He's got a long arm. He's very athletic. He's very confident in his ability. He's not sloppy. Doesn't get any penalties. But I don't think a cornerback is going to change that much about your roster. I kind of do agree with Bucky Brooks getting Derek Brown here because a D tackle would, I think, influence your team a lot more than cornerback because rushing the quarterback, hitting the quarterback on the opponent's team is a lot more influential for your team rather than a cornerback swatting the ball. I mean, I think a secondary, we mentioned off the camera, having a good secondary is more of a cohesive unit rather than one good player. As you saw, they had Darius Slade, but they weren't good.
Yeah, certainly. So with number 4, the Giants picking, it's almost universal across the board with these 4 guys we're looking at for NFL.com that they are going to pick a tackle out of Iowa. One has Isaiah Simmons, which I have seen a lot with Mel Kiper too. I think has Isaiah Simmons, number 4 from Clemson. But yeah, it's really important for those teams that just drafted quarterbacks last year. And I think you'll see this as a pattern going down the list. Those teams that did draft quarterbacks last year in the draft do want to get those offensive linemen, specifically those tackles, to really shore up that offensive line to protect their young quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think the Giants, I think Tristan Wirfs or whatever, however you ever say his last name, I think it's a good pick for them. I think they do need to protect Daniel Jones because I think you saw with the Colts once they got Quentin Nelson, they really solidified that offensive line and they were able to protect Andrew Luck and he had a great year. So I think that's key, protecting your young quarterback. So I think it's a good pick for the Giants with a lineman.
Yeah, and I really believe you try to build your offensive line before you pick that quarterback, but I know that's not the ideal situation for every single team. Most teams usually find the quarterback before they find that offensive line. So hopefully it's not with the Giants, and then we see with the Cardinals later down the board and even the Browns. Hopefully it's not a Indianapolis Colts situation where it takes them years and years and years to finally methodically build that offensive line, because that's the thing about building an offensive line. It is very methodical. It takes years to do. Usually it takes years worth of first-round draft picks and second-round draft picks. We saw the Dallas Cowboys over a 5-year stretch really draft offensive linemen in the first or second round every single year. But we saw with the Cowboys that really paid off, and then we saw with the Colts that eventually really paid off, but it was a little bit too late. So again, hopefully it's not with the Giants. So I really do like the Giants right after they pick Daniel Jones trying to go get that tackle.
Yeah, I think for like a lot of fans, it might be like casual fans, it might be frustrating seeing your team like picking linemen year after year. But yeah. I mean, once you like get a solid offensive line, that really changes a lot of things.
Yeah, it's like getting socks on Christmas, but it's an essential. It's an essential. You got to do it.
So for the 5th pick, it's a quarterback across the board, but a lot of Charles Davis has someone different than the other people. So 3 out of the 4 have Justin Herbert 5, and Charles Davis has Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah, really interesting. Maybe we won't get so much into the prospects themselves and who we think should go here necessarily today. We're going to get into that next week a little bit. But I think it's just really interesting. Tua's went from, wow, the Redskins might draft Tua over Chase Young, or wow, the Bengals could potentially trade down and then get Tua if they really wanted to, if the Dolphins wanted Joe Burrow. We go from that to now Justin Herbert might get drafted above Tua. Jordan Love might get drafted above Tua. Now, I know we have one analyst saying he's going to go number 5. He's going to be the second quarterback taken off the board. But I know there's been really traction gaining in the NFL world that Tua's really slipping and even getting removed from certain teams' draft boards because of his injury history.
Yeah, I think people are just getting scared about the hip. I don't think the ankles are that big of a deal. You get them taped up, should be good. But I think the hip, that's a very scary injury. That a hip injury ruined Bo Jackson's career, and Bo Jackson was like a physical, like once in a generation, once in a millennium, once in a century, like that type of player. So that's scares a lot of people. But I do think the Dolphins need to draft a quarterback. Fitzpatrick is like, he's just a backup. He's a journeyman. I think Josh Rosen, his career as a starter is pretty much done unless there's an injury down the line. I don't think he will see any starting time.
Yeah, I really love the Dolphins getting a quarterback. I do think they do need to draft a quarterback, but it's really interesting with Tua. It's really unfortunate that he's getting drafted this year in lieu of the coronavirus. Teams can't bring him in. And the only doctor that every single NFL team trusts is their own doctors, and Tua hasn't seen an NFL doctor yet. So that's really hurting his draft stock. And another thing, it's just the risk with Tua to draft him is just so high. You're you're the Dolphins GM. You draft Tua and he comes into the facility whenever the facilities can open, and your doctor goes, this hip injury was catastrophic. He's never going to be the same. He's going to have to sit a year, things of that nature. That can cost a GM a job.
Yeah.
Other than, I think if a team passes on Tua, then gets a good player instead of Tua, and Tua ends up being really good still, I think they could still salvage their job. But if you pick a quarterback top 5 and he doesn't end up panning out, you can wish that quarterback and your job goodbye. So I think for that reason, teams are really scared of taking Tua, and I don't blame them. I honestly, with all the risks with Tua, I don't know if I would take him top 5 or top 10. And it's not only the injury history Tua has had, but it's the play style of which Tua operates with in terms of being a quarterback. Even if he hasn't gotten hurt a lot, his frame and how he plays really suggests that he is going to get hurt in the NFL, because he does get hit a lot and he does not do a good job of limiting his exposures to those big hits. We see other small quarterbacks like Kyler Murray and like Russell Wilson have such a good job of doing, being elusive and getting down before you're hit.
Yeah, definitely. So with the Chargers next with the 6th overall pick, we have 2 Tuas. We have 1 Isaiah Simmons and 1 Justin Herbert. I do think the Chargers need to draft a quarterback at this slot. I think they have a really talented roster, and I don't think they should really waste away by not drafting a quarterback and going with someone like Tyrod Taylor right now as their starting quarterback. I think that would really hurt their future. So I think whoever goes ahead of this pick, either Tua or Justin Herbert to the Dolphins, I think that the Chargers might need to pick the opposite.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea for the Chargers. Let's say you're not in love with any quarterback in this draft class, then you pass on a quarterback, get a really good linebacker like Isaiah Simmons, then move forward. Go into the year with Tyrod Taylor, see how that goes, and then try to pick a quarterback next year. I don't think that's such a bad idea, but if you are in love with one of these quarterbacks, you love Jordan Love, you love Tua, you love Justin Herbert, and he falls into your lap at number 6, I think you do need to go and get him, because Tyrod Taylor is a quarterback where if he's your backup quarterback, you love him, you love your quarterback room, and you're very comfortable with it. But if he's your starting quarterback, you always want to upgrade the position, because you saw even that Browns team get significantly better with Baker Mayfield under center compared to Tyrod Taylor. So yeah. Tyrod Taylor is not a quarterback who is going to carry your offense week in and week out. If you have a really, really good team like we saw with some of those Bills teams, then he could maybe squeeze you into the playoffs, but he's not going to win you any games. He's not going to lose you any games necessarily, but in the NFL, you want a playmaker. You want a guy who could week in and week out win you games. So Tyrod Taylor's not that, and if the Chargers think Tua is that or Justin is that, then I do think they should pick him.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. So 7, we got the Carolina Panthers. So it's defense across the board. So we have Isaiah Simmons, we have 2 Derek Browns, and Jeff Okudah. So with this pick, there's a chance that none of these players are available.
Yeah.
So that might cause a lot of issues for the Panthers. But I think if if either one of these players is available, I think you have to take that player. And then if all of them are gone, like for cornerback, you can get C.J. Henderson. He's a great second option at cornerback. Some people say he's better than Jeff Okudah. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think at 7 here, I think the Panthers do, even though they just got Matt Rule, who is an offensive coach, they addressed their offense this offseason. They got 2 quarterbacks in P.J. Walker and Teddy Bridgewater. they have a decent wide receiver core. I think 7 is a little bit too high to get one of those top end wide receivers. I think they can wait a little bit for that. They did just sign Christian McCaffrey to that big deal. They have pretty good offensive line talent. And so I do think with their linebacker Luke Kuechly retiring, I do think they need to bolster that defense in some way. I know Isaiah Simmons is most likely going to be gone by number 7, so I don't think he falls there. I don't think Jeff Okudah falls to number 7 either, and Derek Brown might not either. So that's a good point you made. So I think they could get one of those guys, and I think we do see this every year. We saw this with the Raiders last year where a guy who nobody thinks is going to go top 10 does go top 10. I think we do see that at number 7 with the Panthers, with one of the defensive guys that weren't supposed to go top 10. But again, I think it is really important for the Panthers to go defense because they did just lose their cornerstone on that defensive end, and they are only getting older on defense.
Yeah. I can see them, if like Derek Brown is gone, I can see them picking Javon Kinlaw out of South Carolina, which some people say he's just as good as Derek Brown, if not better. So I can see him climbing up the draft boards and being selected there as well.
Yep.
So for the eighth pick, it's the Cardinals. I'm not going to do much talking. I want to see what your opinions are as a Cardinals fan. See who you want.
So before the DeAndre Hopkins trade, I was very, very torn between getting one of these top-end wide receivers, a CeeDee Lamb's, a Henry Ruggs, or a Jerry Jeudy, or do we get where that would probably be the smarter move going into the future, but we don't really have the best wide receiver room right now. After that DeAndre Hopkins trade, I know Steve Keim, the Cardinals GM, and Cliff Kingsbury, the Cardinals coach, did just say there's still a very high possibility that they do go wide receiver with this 8th pick still. And I know Kyler Murray is still going to be pushing for CeeDee Lamb, his old teammate at Oklahoma, to get drafted by the Cardinals. But I really do think the Cardinals go tackle here. I think they probably go either Jedrick Wills out of Alabama or that really athletic guy, Beacon, I believe his name is, out of Louisville. Yeah. I think that's the really smart move. Kyler Murray led the league in sacks last year. Some of that was his fault, but they have a very bad offensive line. They need more of an athletic offensive line because of the nature of the air raid. So I think it's really important to protect Kyler Murray. He did get hurt in that one game, and we did see Brett Hundley go in. We don't want to see Kyler Murray getting hit a lot, and he did get hit a lot last year. So I think offensive line would be the smartest move, especially because they just did get DeAndre Hopkins. But I think they're still in prime real estate to get a wide receiver in the 2nd round, 3rd round, 4th round, because they did draft a lot of wide receivers last year, but I personally wasn't really impressed with any of their selections.
Yeah, I think that Mekhi Becton from Louisville would be a great pick. He's very athletic. He's very fast, which would go perfect with that offense. But they also can pick Jedrick Williams or like someone from Andrew Thomas from Georgia, who DeAndre Swift had such a great year because Andrew Thomas was leading the way a lot of his runs.
That's a good point. Yep.
So with the number 9 pick, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. A lot of people are saying C.J. Henderson, Tua, and then 2 tackles. But I don't think Tua is going to drop here either. I think the Jaguars should take an offensive lineman because a lot of times Gardner Minshew was being rushed, and a lot of the times he fumbled. So I think if you set that protection around Gardner, he'll have a better year next year.
Yeah, Gardner Minshew is really good at being elusive in the pocket, but we did see too many times where he had to try to evade pressure and really couldn't get the ball out. I think the Jaguars have an underrated arsenal of weapons on that offense. I think they have some pretty good wide receivers. DJ Chark, I think, was under the radar last year, who I really like. So I think it would be really smart for them to go offensive line as well, right after I think the Cardinals potentially get the first offensive lineman if Giants don't go offensive line at 4. So you're still going to have one of those really top guys available. And with offensive line in this year's draft class, there's a lot of really good ones at the top, but not a lot that you can get in later rounds. So it's really important to capitalize on that offensive line when you can. You're picking number 9. So I do think a likely scenario for the Jaguars is that offensive lineman. And I really do disagree with them picking Tua or any quarterback for that matter. Now, I do think one of the top 4 quarterbacks are going to be available by number 9, but I don't think the Jaguars are even really looking at a quarterback. Maybe not until late where they can get a backup for Minshew. It would be interesting if they got the quarterback coming from NC State to back up Gardner Minshew. They did play together, but I don't think quarterback at number 9 for the Jaguars is right just yet.
Yeah, personally, I don't think Tua is going to drop. I don't think they reach to get Jordan Love at 4. All right, 9. There's a lot of skepticism about Jordan Love. People say he might be like the next Patrick Mahomes, but that's just a big question mark.
Yep.
So with the 10th pick, we have the Cleveland Browns. It's pretty much offensive tackle across the board except Isaiah Simmons, but I don't think Isaiah Simmons is going to drop to 10. And I do think that this should be a lineman for the 3rd pick in a row. I think that Baker was getting pressured a lot, and that just really hurt them. And I said it before, and I'll say it again. With the Colts as an example, you set that offensive line, you can have a career year for your quarterback and really start becoming a contender to make the playoffs and win your division.
Yeah, now I know the Browns did get a new head coach this year, and they're going to have a new offensive system this year, but you really saw the Cleveland Browns last year. They ran so many plays under center. They were such a run-centric team, even though they are paying those 2 wide receivers $10+ million each a year, which really doesn't make sense for them. But they do have really, really, really good running backs in Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. So, and you also have Baker Mayfield, who was under so much pressure last year because of how bad that offensive line is. And they are getting the offensive coordinator from the Vikings. And you saw with the Vikings, Kirk Cousins utilized that under center play action pass so much last year. That was so vital to the Vikings offense. And that really requires the quarterback to have a lot of time to throw. So it's going to be really important for the Browns to try to bolster that offensive line that really did struggle last year. So I think the Browns at offensive line really is going to be a good pick for them.
Yeah, definitely. So with the 11th pick, we have the New York Jets, and we have a tackle for 1, and then wide receiver for the rest of the predictions. I think the Jets will pick a wide receiver here. They lost Robbie Anderson to the Panthers in the offseason. I personally think they should pick CeeDee Lamb, and he has more predictions than Jerry Jeudy. I think CeeDee Lamb is better than Jerry Jeudy. I think he's long. He's a great route runner. He's great possession, great hands. I think he's just a perfect wide receiver, and pairing him with Sam Darnold for like having that connection for their whole career would be just like great for both each other. They would really both benefit off that relationship.
Yeah, I really don't know what the Jets are doing right now. I know they are in talks of potentially trading Le'Veon Bell on draft day. I know they are in talks of potentially trading Jamal Adams on draft day. So the Jets moving up in the draft, I think, is a possibility to get one of these high-end talents. Maybe they do move up to get one of those wide receivers. Maybe they don't feel comfortable sitting at 11. Maybe another team does try to jump in ahead of them. But again, I do think they are going to get wide receiver. They really are depleted on the offensive end in terms of talent. They do, again, have Le'Veon Bell, who's one of the best running backs in the league still, in my opinion. Really didn't get to show that last year. They do have a bad offensive line. That's why you do see one of the analysts picking them with offensive line. But I think they're, especially with Adam Gase as their head coach, I think they're antsy to start to get those weapons on offense. So I think they do go with a sexier pick in drafting a wide receiver. So CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy, I don't think you can go wrong with either of those guys. But I do think one of those two names will be called into the Gang Green.
Yep. So with the 12th pick, we have the not even Oakland, Las Vegas Raiders. Vegas Raiders. I think they're going to pick a wide receiver here. They're kind of lacking in that department because they got screwed over by Antonio Brown. I think John Gruden is in love with CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy, so I think if the Jets go ahead and pick Lamb or Jeudy at 11, the Raiders are going to pick the opposite of that.
Yeah, it should be interesting. I do think they're going to get Jerry Jeudy here, but it's going to be very reminiscent of having Amari Cooper with the Raiders, having Amari Cooper with Derek Carr, and we saw that worked out to an extent. They had that 12-4 season where they did have Michael Crabtree and Amari Cooper, but Derek Carr is not that quarterback who is going to push the ball down the field as much. He's a little bit more conservative, and the Raiders, I know they do want to open up the playbook a little bit more, and a Jerry Jeudy would allow them to do that. But I think with the quarterback they have right now, I don't think Jerry Jeudy or CeeDee Lamb would necessarily excel in that Raiders offense. So it would be a little bit disappointing for me at least to see one of those two guys go there because I do really like them and I want them to get paired with a quarterback that could push the ball down the field a little bit more. But I do think the Raiders go at 12 with a wide receiver, and I think they do potentially trade up to get a wide receiver as well.
Yeah, I just think the Raiders. I think Derek Carr would really benefit. I don't necessarily know about the wide receiver personally, but I think Derek Carr, a lot of the balls he throws are drops from the wide receivers. I think his receivers led the league in drop balls the past couple of years. I think that if he has a good wide receiver that can really catch the ball and a good possession wide receivers, this would really help his career. So at 13, we have the San Francisco 49ers coming off of a Super Bowl appearance. So two people have Henry Ruggs III going here, and then they have Kayvon Kinlaw, who is a great D tackle. Some may say he's better than Derek Brown, and then C.J. Henderson, the second best cornerback in the draft. I can see them picking Kayvon Kinlaw because of the loss of DeForest Buckner to Indianapolis, and they lost another D tackle. I'm forgetting his name, but that signed with the Colts as well. But I can see them picking wide receiver too because to really open up their offense. They have a very fast offense, and someone like Henry Ruggs, who is extremely fast, would mesh really well in that offense.
Yeah, you alluded to, I really like how the analysts are thinking, the 49ers just went to the Super Bowl last year. They're not going to be trying to pick best player available. They're going to be trying to pick their top need, and wide receiver and defensive tackle. Again, you touched upon how they lost their defensive tackles in free agency. They also lost their number one wide receiver in free agency, which was Emmanuel Sanders to the Saints. So I do think they're really going to try to go get that wide receiver potentially or that defensive tackle. Now, I really don't think Kinlaw is going to fall to 13, honestly. I think he might go top 10, but I do see the 49ers potentially going that D tackle if that's available, but that wide receiver to really help that offense.
Yeah. So 14, we have the Buccaneers, and across the board, it's an offensive tackle. We have Andrew Thomas and Jedrick Williams. I think that the Buccaneers do need to get an offensive lineman here. Jameis was top 5 hit quarterback last year, and with an older Tom Brady, that's someone you definitely need to protect to keep him healthy. I don't know if Jedrick Williams will drop this far. I think Andrew Thomas would definitely still be available. And like I said earlier, DeAndre Swift had such a great Georgia career because of Andrew Thomas leading the way and really making those huge gaps for him to run through. So I think that this would be a great pick for them.
Yeah, the Buccaneers have a pretty complete roster, especially offensively wise. They have one of the best wide receiving cores, if not the best wide receiver core in the league. They're not going to be trying to pick quarterback right now with Tom Brady. Obviously, Tom Brady's a bit of a statue in the pocket at this point of his career, so I do think it's really important to get those offensive line talent. So I like where the analysts' heads are at. I do think they go tackle, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them get a defender as well. They do have a pretty good defensive line. They do have pretty good linebackers, but they are still a little bit shaky in the secondary. They kind of missed on that Vernon Hargreaves pick a couple years ago. He was getting compared to his other draft contemporary, which I believe was Jalen Ramsey. I believe they did go in the same draft, but Vernon Hargreaves really didn't work out too well. So I think if one of those top 3 cornerbacks are still available at 14, I wouldn't be surprised if the Buccaneers went there, but them getting a tackle, I think Brady might have a little bit of say in who they draft. Maybe not directly, but they'll be thinking of Tom Brady when they're making this pick. So I think a tackle really makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. So we have at the 15th overall pick, we have the Broncos. So we have two wide receivers, Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs, and then we have C.J. Henderson and Kayvon Kinlaw for the predictions. But each of these players might not even be available, and the Broncos, there's a lot to be fixed on their team. Haven't made the playoffs since they won the Super Bowl. So where do you think John Elway goes with this pick?
I really don't think he goes wide receiver here. I disagree with the analysts that think they go wide receiver. They just went wide receiver last year, number 1 with Courtland Sutton, and I do really like Courtland Sutton. I think he's very good, but I don't think the Broncos organization and John Elway are the type of people to go back-to-back drafts with picking a skill position player. So I do think they're going to try to go after that defense a little bit. They did just lose their best cornerback to free agency, or I believe they did release him actually with Chris Harris Jr. So I wouldn't be surprised, again, if a top 3, top 4 corner or top secondary player from the draft is available at 15. I do think they go there. But in terms of getting even anybody on offense, I think they go away from, because they did just give Melvin Gordon that big contract. They are trying to add pieces around Drew Lock. So I do think they go defense with this 15th pick.
Yeah, I mean, if C.J. Henderson's still around, without a doubt, you pick him, or you can get A.J. Terrell out of Clemson as well, and some other cornerbacks around. With the 16th overall pick, we have the Falcons. So I think this is more of a defensive side of the ball selection. Their offense is pretty solidified. We have people saying they get Kayvon Kinlaw, A.J. Terrell from Clemson, also, and C.J. Henderson, who may or may not be available. I think that they do pick defense because their offense is pretty set. They have Gurley. They have a good wide receiver core. I think that if Kinlaw is available, they pick him. I think if any of these players are available, I don't really know about A.J. Terrell's talent, but if he's there, you could definitely pick him.
Ever since blowing that Super Bowl lead to the Patriots, that Falcons defense has really, really regressed and really struggled.
Yeah.
And it's really baffling to me because they do have good personnel on the defensive side. So that makes me believe that it is more schematically more than anything with the Falcons. And I do think that is their problem. And maybe any draft pick right here isn't going to really solve that. But I do think getting another tool for their defense would help that defense out, which really has been dragging them in the mud the past couple of years. I mean, let up 30-plus points to the Cardinals last year, among other teams.
Yeah, I think for the Falcons to really succeed, I think they really need to make a coaching change rather than
Yep.
I think that would really help their team more.
Yeah, I agree.
So at 17, we have the Dallas Cowboys. Again, a pretty overall defensive pick. We have Xavier McKinney from Alabama, and then we have Kavon Chasen from LSU. So I think Kavon would be a great pick for the Dallas Cowboys. I think he's very athletic. Has better aspects in his game than Chase Young.
Yep.
His second best edge rusher. He's really good around the corner, like when he's trying to, like when his shoulder and body's almost touching the ground, he can manage to stay up and keep attacking the quarterback. So I think Kavon Chasen would be a great pick for the Cowboys.
Yeah, Kayvon has great bend, and a big problem with that Cowboys team has been getting after the quarterback. So I do think that's a very likely pick for them if he's still available. Xavier McKinney out of Alabama too. I really like that. They did just lose their best secondary player to the Dolphins and Byron Jones just this past offseason. They have a very good offense in terms of talent. Now they did just lose Travis Frederick, and their offensive line has been a little bit banged up the past 2 years. So it wouldn't surprise me if one of those top offensive talents at the line is still available. It wouldn't surprise me if they went there, but I really don't think those top offensive tackle prospects are going to be there at 17. So I do think they either go secondary or edge.
Yeah, I think a lot of the top tackles are going to be gone already, and I don't think you can. I think there's a bit of a gap between the top guys and then the next group of guys, so I don't think they're going to reach there. I think picking the defensive side, especially the edge, would be very good for them.
Yep.
So for 18, with the Dolphins' second selection of the first round, Joshua Jones and Austin Jackson for tackle, and then Yetur Gross Matos out of Penn State, an edge rusher. I don't know. I think they pick a tackle or an offensive lineman at this pick. I think picking Yetur Gross Matos, which is predicted, would be a bit of a reach. I think he's very athletic, but I think he's kind of a raw talent. I watched a lot of Big Ten football this year, and I think he always relies on his athletic ability and not really like his actual learning finesse moves and bull rush. Even if they do pick an edge rusher, I think someone like AJ Espinosa from Iowa would be a better pick. But I do think they'll pick a tackle this pick to protect their quarterback. They pick one at the 4th overall pick.
Yeah, in terms of how they're really starting to construct their roster, the Dolphins, they're kind of indicating to me at least that they're in win now mode with their roster, and then they just want to put that quarterback in that win now mode team to really start to develop that quarterback, because when you have your quarterback trying to develop and a bunch of other developmental positions and pieces, it's harder for that quarterback to develop. So when you have those solidified position groups that they're starting to do, they are starting to bolster their defense. They have decent wide receiver talent. It wouldn't surprise me if they did go wide receiver at 18 here as well. They have a decent backfield. They could definitely use some more offensive talent, and I do think they're going to use those second-round picks, third-round picks, fourth-round picks to go running back.
Yeah.
Maybe a guy like DeAndre Swift very early in the second, trade up in the second. Maybe they do go DeAndre Swift with that 26th pick that they do have. We'll get to that in a little bit. I know DeAndre Swift is projected to go there by 3 out of the 4 analysts, but I do think it's really important to get one of those positions where you plug him in and he plays like a veteran right away, and offensive linemen in the first round usually do that if they are hit. So I think offensive line makes sense for the Dolphins here.
Yeah, definitely. So with the 19th pick, we have the Raiders again. So it's a lot of defense. We got 2 linebackers, Kenneth Murray out of Oklahoma, Patrick Queen out of LSU, and then we have A.J. Terrell, the cornerback from Clemson, and then Ross Blacklock, a D tackle out of TCU. I do think they pick defense with this pick. I think a linebacker would be great for them. They don't really have that centerpiece for their defense on their roster right now. But someone like Kenneth Murray, I think that's someone like you really have to look at the film to know if he's a good player or not. Because coming out of Oklahoma, their defense is not the best. Big 12 is known as an offensive conference, so that's someone you need to dissect the film. I think Patrick Queen is a great player, the linebacker out of LSU. LSU's team was just so amazing all around that he was a good centerpiece for that defense. So I think they do Patrick Queen at this pick.
Yeah, LSU has some great defensive talent going into this draft. I think they set a record for the amount of defensive players they had invited to the NFL draft, the NFL combine this year, rather, not the draft. So LSU defense, great defense. Patrick Queen was a really good linebacker. He was standout. He was one of those players you watch LSU play on defense, you're going to pick up pretty quickly who Patrick Queen is and where he is on the field at all times. He's one of those type of players. Mike Mayock, I know, likes picking kind of under the radar picks here. Patrick Queen wouldn't really be under the radar, but I think they're going to try to go best defensive player available again like they did last year. So Patrick Queen, I could see that fitting for the Raiders.
Yeah, I just think you saw I forgot his first name, but White a couple of years ago got picked by the Buccaneers, and he was an LSU linebacker. So you know they're breeding.
Yeah, Devin White.
Devin White, yeah, thank you. You know they're breeding great linebackers at that position.
Yep.
So for 20, we have the Jaguars again, and this is pretty much a lot of all over the place. We have an edge rusher and Kayvon Chasen. We have AJ Epinesa. We have Justin Jefferson, and then Stephon Diggs' brother, and Trayvon Diggs, a cornerback out of Alabama. I think that someone like a cornerback or a wide receiver they would select here. I think they do need. I know you said they have a pretty solid wide receiver earlier, but I think getting a young guy and getting more a lot of depth in that position would really help Gardner Minshew. But I can also see them picking a cornerback. They lost a lot of pieces this year. Last year they lost Jalen Ramsey. They don't have AJ Boye anymore, so I think getting a new young guy in there would also help them as well.
Yeah, I agree with that cornerback assessment. I do think they either go corner here or defensive line, specifically edge rusher. Kind of a 4-3 type edge rusher, not really an interior guy. AJ, I know he was flexible. He did get after the pass rusher, but he is very good in the run game as well. I think they do pick a guy like that because they did just lose Calais Campbell as well in free agency to the Ravens. So I think they will try to kind of regain that identity as one of the best defensive teams in the league, and we're going to ground and pound, and we're going to manage the game on offense and win by our defense. I do think they try to get that identity back again. So a cornerback here or a edge rusher or an interior defensive lineman, I think, is their pick here.
Yeah, that also is true because they lost Calais Campbell, and I saw reports of Ngakoue line out as well, so that can also be a good pick for them with the defensive end or an edge rusher.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Jaguars move top 5 to get somebody like Derek Brown or to get somebody like Isaiah Simmons out of Clemson with these draft picks that they do have in the first round and their assets that they do want to move away from. So I do think the Jaguars are potentially a team who are on the trade radar in terms of trading up in the draft.
Yeah, definitely. So with 21, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. It's split between linebackers Patrick Queen and Kenneth Murray and wide receiver Ruggs and T. Higgins. So I think, a wide receiver at this pick would be very good because, looking at last year, Carson Wentz was putting his all on the field, but time in and time out, whatever the saying is, if I botched it. There was a lot of drops with Nelson Aguilar and that's a big problem with that team is dropping the ball and having depth at the wide receiver position. So I can see them picking a wide receiver here. And T. Higgins is an extremely good possession wide receiver. He's not the fastest, but he's big and he'll catch the ball.
Yeah, I really, really think they have to go wide receiver here for the Eagles. Even Nelson Aguilar, he has really bad drops, but he's really, really good at getting open. He's a really good route runner. So they are going to miss that out on Nelson Aguilar. Memes aside, he's very bad at catching the football, but he is gone now. So that even leaves a bigger hole at the wide receiver position for the Eagles. Alshon Jeffrey is getting up there in age. Has a very bad injury history as well. Like you said, with Carson Wentz, he's really had to put that team on his back. They do really need offensive talent. So I think a Ruggs here would be really explosive in that NFC East. Or to pick T. Higgins out of Clemson would be really good as well.
Yeah, definitely. So with the 22nd overall pick, we have the Minnesota Vikings. So one expert saying Justin Jefferson, the wide receiver out of LSU, while the others are saying cornerback or safety. I think that they might pick a wide receiver here with the loss of Stephon Diggs, but I think you see Mike Zimmer favoring the defensive side of the ball a lot more than the offensive side. So I think they could pick a cornerback here or a safety. I think with the loss of Xavier Rhodes, even though he didn't have the best of seasons, they might pick a cornerback here, which would make their defense even stronger.
Yeah, I think they do want to solidify that defensive identity, especially in the secondary. And besides Diggs and Thielen last year, they really don't have that many wide receivers at that position to fall back on. I know they have Treadwell, who they picked in the first round a couple of years ago, really didn't pan out to be a first-round talent. So I do see the Vikings getting a wide receiver, but I don't know if they get it with this 22nd overall pick. I do think they pick a position that is a little bit more scarce in the draft, like a secondary. So I would lean more towards secondary for the Vikings here.
So this is the next pick is a very interesting pick. We have the New England Patriots at the 23rd overall pick. It's all over the place. We have one expert saying a tight end, Zach Bryant out of Florida Atlantic. The other saying safety, Xavier McKinney, AJ Epinesa, and then one saying they reach and get Jordan Love at 23rd overall pick. Do you think they're going to pick a quarterback at 23rd overall pick?
I wouldn't be surprised if they picked a quarterback at some point in this draft, but first round, I think most certainly not. I don't think Bill Belichick has ever picked a quarterback in the first round. I think his highest quarterback selection was actually Jimmy Garoppolo. So I think Bill Belichick is kind of one of those guys, one of those GMs and one of those coaches where he's very confident in himself to develop a later round quarterback to become a franchise guy like he is with Jarrett Stidham. I think he's very confident in Jarrett Stidham, and I think he thinks that he could turn Jarrett Stidham into a starting quarterback. But I do think they add another quarterback into that quarterback room with Brian Hoyer and Jarrett Stidham, but I don't think they do it here. I don't think they get a guy like Jordan Love. You see a lot of the times with the Patriots, their first round draft picks are win now type guys that could be plugged in right away and have a really good effect on that team, and guys that they don't even necessarily want for more than 5 years after that rookie deal. So I do think they get a guy like AJ or a guy like Xavier McKinney to really bolster that defense, potentially that historic defense last year, or maybe they get another wide receiver, or they do get a tight end, Harrison Bryant out of Florida Atlantic.
Yeah, I think I don't think they're going to pick a quarterback. I think they might ride with Jarrett Stidham or even pick a quarterback later in the draft because there's some depth at the quarterback position this year.
Yep.
I think that since they're going to probably have a young quarterback playing, I think a tight end would be a great pick for them as being like a safety blanket for him as a young quarterback in a very extremely hard league and ever so difficult division with the growing Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills defense.
Yep.
So with the 24th overall pick, we have the New Orleans Saints. So two experts are saying Patrick Queen, one saying Jordan Love, and then one is saying wide receiver Brandon, I don't even know how to say that last name, out of Arizona State. I don't think they're going to pick a wide receiver here. They just got Emmanuel Sanders. And I don't know if they're going to pick a quarterback either because I think Sean Payton is interested in Taysom Hill. So I think a linebacker would be good for them, or someone on the defensive side of the ball would help them out.
Yeah, I'd be very interested to see Jordan Love get picked here. And I think for Jordan Love, he would not like to fall to 24, but I think that would be an ideal situation for him. Sit behind a Drew Brees, a great quarterback who's only going to play another 1 or 2 years, and then be in that great offensive system that is the New Orleans Saints and really learn under Sean Payton. I think that'd be great for Jordan Love, but I don't think that's really out of the realm of possibility. I could see the Saints picking a quarterback above some other teams that are potentially projected to get a quarterback like the Raiders, like the Patriots. I think the Saints are more likely than those teams, but I don't think they go quarterback here. I don't even think they go offense here. I think they do go defense to try to add another year into their championship window. So I do think they try to bolster that defense with potentially a guy on the edge, a defensive lineman, or a linebacker because they do have a very good secondary.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think like a middle linebacker that can rack up a lot of tackles would be very beneficial for them.
Yep.
With the 25th overall pick, we have the Minnesota Vikings. So one expert is saying an offensive lineman out of Boise State, Ezra Cleveland, while the other are saying wide receivers, T. Higgins or Justin Jefferson. I do think they're going to pick a wide receiver at this position since they lost Diggs and give another a second option behind Thielen or even a first option if they have a bigger wide receiver. I think if T. Higgins is available, they should pick him. or even Justin Jefferson because some say he's the second best wide receiver prospect.
Yeah, I think this 25th overall pick by the Vikings really, really depends on what they get at 22 and what happens between those two more picks that they have in between the 22nd pick and the 25th pick. But depending, again, if they pick wide receiver 22, I think they don't 25. I think if they don't 22, I do think they do 25. So I would be, if you're a Vikings fan, expect them to pick a wide receiver in the first round with one of those two picks. And then I really do think it's not out of the realm of possibility to get that tackle, because I did touch upon why it's so important for the Browns to get that offensive line, but it is still very important for those Vikings teams to get that offensive line, because again, Kirk Cousins isn't the most mobile quarterback. He isn't really that elusive in the pocket. He has some trouble evading pressure sometimes, stepping in and out of the pocket. And they do have that really good run game with Dalvin Cook. That was kind of their identity on offense last year, along with that play action pass, which is a longer developing play, which requires better pass protection. So I really do think they go wide receiver than or offensive lineman here.
Yeah, definitely. So with the 26th overall pick, we have the Dolphins' third selection of the first round. Do you think it's a possibility that the Dolphins use their 3 picks to trade up even further?
I do think it's a possibility. I think it's pretty likely that they don't stay with all 3 of these picks, or maybe none of these picks. But if they do stick with this 26th pick, I do think it's very likely that they do reach and try to get a running back type player or a wide receiver potentially. So DeAndre Swift is projected to be one of the best running backs, if not the best running back in this draft. I do really like the running back coming out of Ohio State. You know him very well. And the running back out of LSU, his name is escaping me, but he's very explosive as well.
So Hilaire.
Yes. So I can see the Dolphins kind of reaching a little bit with the running back here, because I do think it would be a reach. I think they'll be available in the second round. And I'm not a big fan of paying a running back first round money, but with all the guarantees that go in your contract when you're a first round pick, but I think it is possible for the Dolphins to go running back here at 26.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of DeAndre Swift. I think it'll be more beneficial for them to get someone like J.K. Dobbins or Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think they're better, more complete players. I think DeAndre Swift, although J.K. Dobbins and Helaire had great offensive lines, I think Swift really excelled because of how great his offensive line and how big his holes were when he was running through them. I think he's a bit of a stiff runner, and he doesn't have the best juke move and stuff like that. I think J.K. Dobbins is extremely fast, and I think they should pick J.K. Dobbins at the 26th overall pick.
Yeah, alluding to Clyde Edwards-Helaire just a little bit here, I think he is one of my favorite players in this entire draft, because I do think he's going to fall a little bit because he's not the flashiest player. He really does stand out on tape. You watch LSU, you're going to really see that Helaire not only is a really good running back, but he's such a good pass catcher coming out of the backfield. He's a guy who can get 70 catches right away in the NFL in a season. I think he's that good. But he had a very underwhelming NFL pro day. Why is the word escaping me?
Scouting combine?
Scouting combine, yeah. I think he only ran a 4.6, and I don't think he was too explosive, but he's one of those guys where he's small, he's not the fastest, but he puts on a helmet and shoulder pads, and he's one of the best players day in and day out, every single game. Joe Burrow said Helaire was the best player he's ever played with, and he's played with some incredible talent at not only Ohio State. I believe he played with Ezekiel Elliott at Ohio State, actually, at some point.
Yeah, I just think, even though his scouting combine stats weren't the best, I think that just, I think speed at a scouting combine versus speed on the field is a lot different. I think he'll be able to catch the ball out of the backfield, and he'll be able to run the ball, and he'll just be able to do everything, which would be a great selection for the Dolphins. I think, Dobbins or Helaire would be better for them than Swift. personally.
Yeah.
So 27. What are you saying?
So a little fact check there. Joe Burrow indeed did play with Ezekiel Elliott, and he actually played with Michael Thomas as well at Ohio State. So for him to say that Solaire is the best player he's ever played with, I know it's a little bit of a biased opinion, but that is saying a lot.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Burrow was on that. I don't know if he was on the national championship team, but he might have been the year after. But those years, they were stacked, their whole roster up and down, NFL talent everywhere.
Yeah.
So with the 27th overall pick, we have the Seattle Seahawks. It's pretty the same across the board, except one analyst saying Austin Jackson, but the other saying the edge rusher Yatir Gross-Matos. I think they do pick an edge rusher with the possibility of losing Jadeveon Clowney or even pairing him up with the Jadeveon Clowney would be a great benefit. You see they lost a lot of defensive pieces recently, and it's not what they used to be with the Legion of Boom. So I think they're trying to really vamp up their defense again. So I think Yetur Gross-Matos would be a great selection here.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's so important in that NFC West to have guys that can get after those really good quarterbacks and those really good offenses. And we saw Jadeveon Clowney have such a great effect on that Seahawks team last year. He flat out won the Seahawks some games last year. So for them to lose a player like that potentially to free agency, now I know he hasn't signed anywhere just yet, but if they do potentially lose him, they do need that other edge rusher. And I don't even know if Gross-Matos could go into that same role that Clowney did fill, but for them to potentially get that guy would be great at 27.
Yeah, definitely. So with the 28th overall pick, we have the Baltimore Ravens. So it's pretty consensus defense across the board. One analyst saying A.J. Epinesa, while the others are saying linebacker, either Zach Bond out of Wisconsin or Kenneth Murray out of Oklahoma. I think picking defense would be great for them. I think their offense is pretty solid right now, so I don't think they have much touching up to do on the offensive side of the ball because they have the MVP. They have a solid receiving core. They have a good running game. I think having someone, a linebacker, to be a centerpiece and really racking up tackles would be beneficial for them. So I think they do pick Zach Bond or Kenneth Murray if Kenneth Murray drops there because I saw he was projected to go higher in the draft.
Yeah, now I think it is really important. I do think they go linebacker here. They've lost some linebackers over the past couple of years. Terrell Suggs, for example, and Ravens, for those Ravens teams throughout history.
Historically good defense teams.
Yeah, with John Harbaugh, not only do they have good defenses, but they specifically have a good linebacking core. So I do think that's very important for that identity as a team. Ravens continue to get better this offseason. I think they have one of the best off seasons. I think they are the second or third best team going into the NFL next year. I don't think you can say they're the best because of the Chiefs, but I think it is very, very important, if not vital, for this Ravens team to get a big wide receiver, maybe at 28, but at some point in this draft, because we saw last year they really struggled at times with blocking down the field with their wide receivers and really getting open versus bigger defenses. They had such trouble in that divisional round game against the Titans last year. Their wide receivers performed horribly. I felt very bad for Lamar Jackson. He didn't have the best game, but I thought he still played pretty good. He threw for over 300 yards that game. And you got guys like Willie Snead dropping balls. And that's why that A.J. Brown pick last year really baffled me, because he's a really good player and he was a good pick last year, but A.J. Brown doesn't fit their team that well, in my opinion. I do think they need that big wide receiver that could still stock block. It's really important to have that really fast weapon down the field. So I really do like Hollywood Brown on one end, maybe the slot, but I think it is really important for them to get another wide receiver. So
yeah, I just think that looking at like the top 4 or 5 wide receivers, I don't think they're going to be available at this pick. So I think I have to go with the defense side of the ball. And then maybe in the second round or third round, they go after more wide receivers because I think this year is pretty there's good depth with the wide receiver prospects.
Yeah, potentially a guy like Denzel Mims. I believe he's 6'3". He's out of Baylor. a guy
Yeah.
like that later on in the draft who is still a really good player but could fall to you.
So 29th overall pick, we have the Tennessee Titans. Either offensive tackle Isaiah Wilson at Georgia, Joshua Jones out of Houston, or an edge rusher Marlon Davison out of Auburn, and then Brandon, the wide receiver Brandon. I don't know how to say his last name. I'm sorry, Brandon, if you're listening.
Hopefully he is, but yeah, the Titans, sorry about that. The Titans have a really good or have a really long history, especially as of late, of getting defensive players in the first round of the draft. I know last year they got AJ Brown first with the first round pick. So again, I'd be surprised if they went offense here unless it was tackle Isaiah Wilson potentially out of Georgia or Joshua Jones out of Houston. But I do think they go defense here.
Yeah, I mean, I can see them picking a wide receiver, build up their wide receiver core to really help Tannehill.
Yeah.
If teams are going to the game and they're like, oh, they're going to give it to Derrick Henry the whole game, and then if you play action them and you have a strong wide receiver core to throw to after the play action, I think that would really help Tannehill and that would help their team make a deep run into the playoffs.
Yep.
Because also, if you're not running to Derrick Henry that much or as much, that really helps him not being as injury prone or being run into the ground if they reach the playoffs.
Yep.
So with the 30th overall pick, we have the Green Bay Packers. One expert saying a linebacker, Jordan Brooks out of Texas Tech, while the others are saying Joshua Jones, tackle, Houston, Jordan Love, quarterback, or Colorado wide receiver, Laverde Chenault Jr.
Yeah.
I can see them picking a lineman here. I mean, they kind of a little bit of a struggle as an offensive line this year. I can also see them picking a linebacker because they lost Blake Martinez, who was I believe their leading tackler last year to the Giants. I can see them picking a linebacker to fill his role again. But I can also see them picking a wide receiver because their wide receiver core is lacking a little bit behind Devontae Adams. So I can see them picking that. But I don't think they're going to pick a quarterback. I think they still think they got some good years behind in front of Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I really don't think they pick quarterback with the first round pick. Maybe they do get a quarterback at some point in this draft.
Yeah.
But I don't think Aaron Rodgers is the type of quarterback to be fully accepting of a quarterback that they would pick in the first round rather than make their team better in the intermediate fashion. I think Aaron Rodgers would treat a Jordan Love type player very similar to how he was treated by Brett Favre, and that is not very well. So I think another thing, despite I think popular belief, was that last year the Packers were 13-3 because of their defense and because of their run game, not so much because of Aaron Rodgers and the pass game. So I think they'll try to further that identity and potentially get a defensive player. If not, I do think it is really important for them to get better at that wide receiver position because they've struggled for years and years now at the wide receiver position when Greg Jennings and Donald Driver and that kind of era of football, Jordy Nelson, that era of football went away. I know Devontae Adams is top 10 wide receiver in the league, in my opinion at least. I think he's very good, but he's had some injury concerns, and you can't really get away with having one really good wide receiver in the league anymore. You need multiple on that wide receiver core.
Yeah, because you see teams like 3 good wide receivers, even 4. So I think they can't. It's like not a sustainable roster having like St. Brown and some of the other guys they have there.
Yep. Geronimo Addison. I love their names there, but
yeah, they have cool names. Geronimo Allison's not really breaking the touchdown bank.
Nope.
So with the 31st overall pick, we have the 49ers, who I believe this is their second pick of the first round. So some experts are saying Ross Blacker, the D tackle out of TCU, Trayvon Diggs, the cornerback, and then I'm sorry, Brandon, the wide receiver.
He's going to show you. He's going to be the best player coming out of this draft. Didn't even know how to pronounce his name.
I think that whatever need they address with that that first round pick. Like if they pick a wide receiver there, that they kind of address the opposite
Yeah.
pick that they previously did.
Yeah, I think they'll go offense then defense or defense then offense. That is a good point. I really do strongly believe they do get a wide receiver at 13. I think Shanahan's a bit of a flashy coach. I think the 49ers are a bit of a flashy team in the sense of who they're trying to pick up. So it would not surprise me at 13 again if they got that wide receiver. So at 31, I think they'll get less of a sexy pick, but more of a vital pick, a defensive tackle, a defensive lineman who is going to fill a need for them because it's really a shame you already see that great historically good offense or defensive line already be disassembled after 1 year being together. So I think they'll start to try to fill in those pieces again.
Yeah, I think that Ross Blacklock, whatever it is, my name pronouncing is abysmal, but I think I think they do pick, if they pick wide receiver at 13, at 31, they do pick that D tackle to fill the role of DeForest Buckner and the players that they lost in the offseason. So, rounding out the first round, the Super Bowl champions, Kansas City Chiefs. Two experts saying Cesar Ruiz out of Michigan, while others are saying J.K. Dobbins and Zach Bond, the linebacker out of Wisconsin. I mean, I could see them picking any of these positions. I think getting J.K. Dobbins to complement Damian Williams would be great for them. Also, getting a linebacker like to rack up tackles and be an anchor on that side would be great. And then also a center to help protect Mahomes would be great too. I think either of these options would be beneficial for the team. I mean, there's not much holes on that roster to begin with. Maybe on the defensive side, but it doesn't really matter when you're scoring 50 points a game.
Yeah, I think that Kansas City Chiefs defense really did evolve the latter part of the season last year. They played much better. They actually won them some games, I thought, even with Matt Moore starting at quarterback for the couple games that he did. But I think it is just absolutely incredible to think about how great this Kansas City Chiefs offense has been the past 2 years. All of that without a workhorse running back, without that number one running back. So I think if you could get a really good running back here, that would make the Chiefs offense even more explosive and even better. We saw what Kareem Hunt was able to do in that Chiefs offense without Patrick Mahomes. If you can get a Kareem Hunt type player with Patrick Mahomes, I think that would make their offense even more unstoppable than it is right now.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think if they got a Dobbins here, that would be great to their team. Or if they got a Swift, if the Dolphins take Dobbins or Swift or Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who would be great out of the backfield catching balls from Mahomes, I think that would really benefit their team. Well, there you have it. There's our breaking down of these mock drafts by the analysts. We hope everybody enjoyed watching this video. We'll see you in the next episode.